us have been friends and interested in Paul's work for a really long time. So we were lucky to get this piece. And what you can't get out of this, obviously, is it's a moving video, a very staticky moving video, though. These are videos in which Paul did the 3 big Muhammad Ali fights and actually removed the figures of the fighters. So in this case, it was him and Sonny Liston. And so you have this sort of focus on the spectacle of the crowd, and you can see people going up and down, and it's sort of like these ghost figures that are moving. It's just a really meditative and beautiful video. Robert Mapplethorpe. Last year, along with the Getty, and these are the kind of things that happen, I guess, the idea of collaboration to face the challenge of acquisitions. Along with the Getty, we acquired the remaining archive of Robert Mapplethorpe. So it's something like, 500 different photographs and negatives, archival materials. And we used this image as a way of setting up, I think, a discussion on strategies in the early 90s by many artists to talk about issues of portraiture and of self-identity in particular. So this piece was kind of a setup to look at works by Lorna Simpson, Yinka Shonibari, and some others. Next one. The Shonibari piece there. Again, thinking about portraiture, thinking about identity, thinking about costume. Cindy Sherman was also in that room. And then wanting to end with something of a nod back to Southern California and back to LA and artists that we are living and working with right now. So Mark Bradford, there's a great painting that came into the collection through a program called Art Here and Now, which allows us to purchase and give an award for a young LA artist. Otherwise, of course, now there's no way we can afford a Mark Bradford. And there's the Rukin figure again, because we also had it not only in the context of that group exhibition, but in the context of the big solo show that's now in Fort Worth. So this was actually the first acquisition I think that I made in Los Angeles. And with the idea that we were going to be taking that solo show, we tried to acquire a couple of pieces beforehand because he was not yet represented in the collection, and had the opportunity to buy this piece, one of his more recent neons that came about after the election of Obama, but also came out of his feelings on looking at the war in Afghanistan and Iraq and thinking about how backwards perhaps America is, but yet also how it can be a sort of beacon of light. So you had these different iterations or on America that Glenn did. A video piece, Death of Tom, which is a collaboration between Glenn and the friend Jason Moran from Houston. So we also purchased this work before the exhibition. Next one. And then there's just a few views from the exhibition in LA. And you can see the 3 America neons there in the bottom right of different variations. One view of the Ligon at the top, and then a view of another exhibition that was on at the same time by an artist collective called OSCO. And that's a group of artists who came together in the 1970s, all went to high school together on the east side of LA, and talked about a lot of Chicano issues in that exhibition, and that was going on at the same time. Another recent acquisition, piece by Ai Weiwei. Next one. And that was done with the idea that we were going to have the big Zodiac sculpture that's on its way to Houston. Next one. And Christian Marclay, definitely one of our bigger acquisitions. Very happy to say that I think it's an edition of 6. And so we were able to get this piece, which has been a real boon for the collection and for the museum. And this is where I think we face the challenge of not having an in-depth collection around artists, is that you go for works that perhaps are their sort of, their biggest pieces, Gesamtkunstwerk, trying to I think about it in a completely different way. We're not gonna get 20 works of Marclay, and as I said with Bradford, we're already priced out. So we're thinking like this, and that was one way to do it. Next piece. So just another 4 screenshots of this piece in which he's sewn together and remixed thousands of cuts from movies. And just, if you don't know, for a piece that lasts 24 hours, so it's a durational video. This is a little sketch by Howardina Pindell that was also a recent acquisition, and I think that's been a priority as well. I think LACMA has had a somewhat rocky relationship with its African-American artist community, and so, it's something that we think of. So I was very happy that this piece recently came in. And then also, we were able to recently purchase a sketchbook called the Ruth Waddy sketchbook. And Ruth Waddy was an artist and a curator primarily in the 60s. Along with Samela Lewis, she did one of the first real definitive books on black artists. So this is a piece by Noah Purifoy, and see it says From Signs of Neon at the top. So he's referencing back that piece I mentioned, 66 Signs of Neon. A couple more pieces from the sketchbook. On the left, Varnett Honeywood, and on the right, David Hammons, one that you would not necessarily identify with him. She was able to get him to do this piece in the sketchbook in 1983, and he did a quick little portrait. On the left, Lois Mailou Jones, and on the right, Dana Chandler.
And would she go around and ask these artists to draw her book?
Totally. She was given an empty sketchbook by the Washington, D.C. artist, E.J. Montgomery. And supposedly Vanjie said, go around, you go to all these conferences, you know all these artists, please go around and get them all to fill this up. And that's exactly what she did. Which one? Ruth Waddy, it's the Ruth Waddy sketchbook. The artist on the left is Lois Mailou Jones. And look, this is the Romare Bearden. So, there's a range. I'm giving you a selection, of course, but there's about 100 different pieces in this sketchbook, and we'll have it on view in a few years. Recent acquisition, and this is the other place where we can meet the sort of acquisition challenge. You go super young, looking at artists, who are in the core program. Perhaps we can afford you, I hope. This is an artist who just graduated from Cal Arts 2 years ago. Her name is Alex Olson, and she shows with Lisa Cooley, who used to work here in Houston. So we were able to get this piece very early on. I mean, you know how it is. In 2 years, I don't even know if we can afford it anymore. Excellent. Larry Walker is a piece that came into the collection recently as well. I think that. Oh, and Bruce Nauman. Back to the idea of the big sort of spectacular piece and how to deal with the fact that we're not collecting necessarily artists in depth. So this is a video piece that is projected on a 2-sided screen, and it's about 20 feet wide and about 20 feet tall and 12 feet wide. And it's a huge sound piece. So you have these 4 big speakers in all corners of the room where he is basically telling you what he's doing with his hands. It's called For Beginners, and he's doing all the combinations of the thumb and fingers and saying it. So it's this very sort of almost monotonous type piece. It almost becomes quite trance-like. And that's it. Thank you.
So Franklin, we could entertain about 3 questions.
Oh. Okay.
It looks like you're doing a lot of acquisitions, because you've been there, what, a couple of years now?
Yeah.
Was that your primary goal when you got there, to start beefing up the collection in certain directions?
It has been. I should mention the director there came on in 2006. So I think there has been a difference in the way that the museum has worked since then. And the acquisition strategy has definitely been ramped up. And for me, that was important. And especially about trying to identify certain artists that have been overlooked was also something that we've very much been trying to work on.
And I gather diversity was also a major part.
Big time.
I might have missed it. You mentioned earlier about the permanent exhibition for Rose Dog and the crack date leaving.
Yes.
What's, in
We have there's a Chris Burden piece that's going to go in for a little while. And in some ways, it goes back to the collector thing. So we have a board member named Nicholas Bergruen, who in some ways, I think people might say that he can fill the void that has been left by Eli Broad. So he's been making big acquisitions. I don't have the image, but we have a piece called Metropolis that opened about a month ago. And it's a piece that Chris Burden was working on for the last 4 years with thousands of Matchbox cars going around this futuristic looking city. Sits in a room about the size of this room, built a scaffold all around it so that you can look down upon it. And it actually has someone standing in the middle as like a conductor. So it's a quite intricate piece. And that was a purchase of Nicholas Bergruen. It's a 10-year loan. So we're making a connection with that piece. And then what I'd like to do is still, while we have the relationship, build upon the strength of the Broad collection, which is primarily in the 80s. I think some of the best work that they have comes from the 80s. So trying to build upon that and give a different taste of that collection. Whereas it's big in a lot of painters like Ross Bleckner, Eric Fischel, David Saleh. We'd like to show a little bit more of a political view by synergizing it with our collection. So you're going to get a little bit of Sherry Levine, some Barbara Kruger, Robert Gober, Katie Nolan, artists like that who are working simultaneously or at the same time.
One more question.
Pacific Standard Time, would you suggest that it was a big undertaking? What's the lasting legacy for the arts community in Montana?
The archive that has been created from the research that went on in the process of putting together those shows, I think is phenomenal. The books, I mean, Eugene just gave me a copy of one of them. The books that have been created from those shows is incredible. I probably would not be able to do the solo exhibition on Noah Purifoy had Kelly Jones not done the show at the Hammer called Now Dig This, which was about black art in LA from 1960 to 1980. And Purifoy ended up looking like a genius in that show. She put him in the middle of a room where you could see how he influenced so much work that came after him, especially somebody like Hammonds. So I think that's the thing that's coming forth. And also speaking toward that idea of diversity, because it was an opportunity for people to go back and look at artists that were overlooked. So you have a lot of artists who are, I think the spotlight is back. Judy Chicago even, I mean, not somebody who lost the spotlight, but somebody who is being looked at in a different way right now. So I think that's the legacy.
Thank you so much. We're going to take a, thank